Welcome back. You're listening to the discussion Cyber Futures 2020 and Beyond, sponsored by Raytheon on Federal News Network. I'm your host, Jason Miller. My guest today, Dave Frederick, the Deputy Director for Cybersecurity Directorate at the National Security Agency. Tim Coker, the Special Advisor for the Office of Cybersecurity, Energy Security, and Emergency Response at the Department of Energy. Wally Coggins, the Director of the Intelligence Community Security Coordination Center in the Office of the Director of National Intelligence. Matthew Eggers, the Vice President of Cybersecurity Policy at the U.S. Chamber of Commerce. And Sanjay Gupta, the Chief Technology Officer at the Small Business Administration. In the last segment, we heard a lot about each of kind of your focus areas. But one common theme that I think came up is this idea of, and I hate this trite expression, but I will say it just to get out of the way. We can play buzzword bingo later. Team sport, right? Cybersecurity is a team sport. We hear it often, over and over again. But it's true for many reasons, but the collaboration, the communication between the public and private sector is huge. So let me start at the other end of the table and go to Sanjay. SBA, talk a little bit about the sharing you guys are doing or looking to do when it comes to the threat intelligence, because again, if you're on an island by yourself, you're not going to be successful.
Right, and I think you made a very important point about the team sport. I'll kind of present it in a different way, Jason.
Please don't use the trade thing, yeah, please.
If you think about it, really, in my assessment and opinion, really no one organization today has the resources to be the vanguard of cybersecurity. So what does that mean is you have to be collaborative. You have to rely on other partners, other organizations, other collaborators to become more strong from a cybersecurity standpoint. So sharing becomes a very key integral part of that element. So from a sharing standpoint, quite frankly, I mean, from our SBA standpoint, I was initially, when I was confronted with the idea of sharing with another federal agency, in this case DHS, the answer was, well, we really don't share a lot of information. But rather than going into why not, one of the things that we've done at the SBA is being pretty open about and transparent about what information we have, what capabilities we have, and we've been open to sharing that with the other federal agencies. I'll give you a couple, 3 examples of how we are doing that. So for instance, we deployed a series of cloud-based cybersecurity tools, and they provide us a wealth of information in terms of visibility, in terms of what's happening in our network on the minute-by-minute basis. And so we offered really 3 options to DHS so they could have access to the same information we had. And so the first and foremost, we said, it was a simple one. We said, we'll give you access to our cloud tenant where we have this information available. So you now have access to all of our logs, alerts, and everything that we have access to. Number 2 option we said is most of these tools today in the cybersecurity arena today are what the concept of called dual homing or multiple homing. What that simply says is you can send the output of this sensor or device to multiple destinations. And as long as you define the destination, hopefully in a cloud environment, all you need is a subscription ID or a tenant ID, and you can point that to that. So we offered that to DHS, and we said, look, we have those tools, the tools have those capabilities, it's no additional cost to us, and you can set up a subscription in any cloud, and then we can point this to you. And third option we provided was the fact that you can co-locate SOC analysts within our SOC. So now they are sitting side by side with our SOC analysts, and they can see the information, have exchange of information, and collaborate with us. So I think collaboration and information sharing in cybersecurity is really critical. I'm glad to see some of my colleagues here are also seeing that, and I'll be really interested to see how much more we can move forward in that. Now that's from the agency standpoint.
So I have to jump in.
Sure.
Which option did they take?
I think my answer, no answer, is probably is enough to tell you what option they took.
No, it's not, but okay.
Yeah, but that was about 1.5 years ago, and we've really not seen much traction around it, unfortunately, I should say. But just if we think about it from a private sector standpoint as well, so that's the agency side, the federal side. One area I think we can have a huge impact is the zero-day vulnerabilities, right? And that's something, if you think about it, has been around for a while, continues to be an irritant, if you will. But if you work very actively with the key providers of infrastructure or core services, they are well aware of those 0 days and when they are going to introduce a patch. And so we can, as a federal government, participate in a collaborative effort with them and find out a way to say, okay, can we reduce the vulnerabilities introduced by the 0 day? Then we are in a better shape. So I think there is a value in sharing both across the private sector as well as the public sector.
Tim, I'm going to bring you in on this as well, because I think one thing that Sanjay was saying was the idea of understanding where the threats are and then how to create the sharing mechanism. I mean, I think that's really why your office was created in many ways.
Yeah, I think that's true. The collaboration piece is really key. We have so many different stakeholders who have slightly different interests, and so one thing that we do spend a good bit of time on is bringing everyone to the table, right? So whether that's the industry and whether that's specific companies, that could be our sector coordinating councils that we work through. There's also the information sharing and analysis centers. There are 3 in the energy sector, so we work closely with each of them. We're also working with folks like NERC, which is kind of the energy regulator for the United States and Canada. And so we have all these different partners in the private sector, and then we're also working with industry or within the government. And so you've got several different offices in DOE. We refer to it almost as an integrated project team because between our office, we also have our Office of Intelligence and Counterintelligence, our Office of the CIO, and then we've also got our Office of Electricity, and we're all working very closely together to make these kind of information sharing apparatus work because it really requires a key component and contribution from all of those offices, as well as our other government partners like the Department of Homeland Security.
Jason, I might just note I agree with what I've heard. You asked about team sport. I don't know if there's anything more team-oriented than information sharing, right? I've often thought of looking at cyber from a kind of a cyber fitness standpoint, meaning I don't care where your organization is, I just need you to start thinking about cyber risk management and improve over time. One of the reasons why the information sharing bill was important, not only because of the protections and the encouragement to share threat indicators it provided, but it signals to, I think, stakeholders, if a company's in a position to be sharing, it's probably moved up the tiering structure, at least vis-a-vis the NIST cybersecurity framework. So it says to observers, if I am sharing on a regular basis, if it's a function of what I do as an organization, my cybersecurity is fairly mature, right? We've got established ISACs that are doing great work. The financial services ISAC, it's got thousands of companies that feed indicators to partners and the government. We've got up-and-coming ISACs, the auto ISAC. It's got some 50 companies now, 20 partners. It's doing great stuff. We want to be doing more of that. If there's anything I think I take away from the information sharing discussion these days is we've passed the law in 2015, but I think we want to be doing more in terms of trying to anticipate and kind of beat back threats before or potential attacks before they happen.
Dave, jump in.
Yeah, I'd like to kind of add to what Matthew was saying about how do we now go from what the law in 2015 said is the baseline to advance sharing and collaboration. So what we spent some time this summer engaging industry partners, engaging other federal government partners to really understand what can NSA do to more effectively share information about advanced threats, which is kind of going to be our value add, and help other partners really defend themselves. And so 2 things we're focused on. One is sharing tradecraft. So we're trying to produce products now that really help your net defenders understand the tradecraft the nation state actors are using and be able to prioritize their mitigations because the net defenders tend to get overwhelmed. There's so much to do. How can we help prioritize? And so an example of that, we recently published a cybersecurity advisory on virtual private network threats, and because we had found, and kind of going back to a point made earlier about weaponization of tools, we found that multiple nation state actors had weaponized some vulnerabilities had been reported several months earlier. Patch had been released, so if federal government entities and companies took the steps to patch, they were okay. But we determined from our intelligence that was not occurring fast enough, and so we got the word out to an advisory. The other piece is trying to share as much as we can at the unclassified level, so that's going to be a big focus for NSA. And the key reason for that is we're charged with helping the Department of Defense defend the defense industrial base. The DIB is a huge part of the economy. There's a lot of companies out there, and especially the small and medium-sized companies. There's just no other practical way to get the word out and help those companies prioritize and know what's going on. So you're going to see an increase from NSA in terms of tradecraft-oriented reports that's going to be published at the unclassified level. We think it's going to be really important. Kind of building upon what CISA said as the baseline, we've got to share indicators quickly. But we really see the next thing to do as a team is really get into tradecraft sharing.
Maybe Jason, a quick point on that is where I think that's really important is for those companies that are very critical to the economy. They kind of make the economy run in various sectors, banking, electric, communications, and so forth. Those top-tier entities in those spaces really value that input, and they're able to leverage that information because they've got the tools and the people to make it work.
Wally, jump in on the discussion because I want to get your opinion both on the threat side of the sharing of threat side, but also then how to use that information to prioritize.
Absolutely, yeah. Where we sit at the IC Security Coordination Center is we're working on the integrated defense of the entire intelligence community information environment. So we're dealing with the full gamut of agencies with capabilities like Mr. Frederick's at NSA, which are world-class, incredibly well-resourced, to other agencies that are much smaller, have much fewer resources available to do this work. So we're working to leverage exactly the information that Dave talked about, having available and getting that to the agencies that need it. And there are other agencies that are sharing that information with us. We're bringing it together. We've deployed capabilities, a central repository for threat indicator sharing in the classified environment. We think that it's important to have that all source where we're able to bring in open source, commercial supplied information, as well as highly classified collected information, put that together in one place, and then do tearline reporting out of that. What of that all source intelligence can we get to our partners at Energy so that they can help defend their section of the critical infrastructure. We're also working closely daily with DHS. Election security is very important these days, as are the other aspects of the critical infrastructure.
The central repository, I know you can't talk too much about it,
yeah.
but is that something that has been around, but you guys are expanding it in terms of both who you're able to share within, for instance, Tim's group,
yep.
Or is it something that's more, hey, this has come up because there's been a big need because of the
Sure.
change of the cyber threat?
It's been available for some time on the high side. The classified networks for individuals at agencies, wherever they are, that have access to the classified networks. Though we do have initiatives underway to do deployments of it at the unclassified level and the secret level. And that's going to allow us to have near real-time sharing with our partners that operate in those environments. The other important part of that is we're going to be able to bring in information from their stakeholders where the real fight's going on, the defense industrial base, the energy sector, that they're seeing the adversary work in those environments. They'll be able to share that with us. We'll get that to the high side where the intelligence analysts can look at that along with classified collections and really put the big picture together.
One of the things that comes up when we talk about sharing is if it's two-way or not. And then let me, Matthew or Tim, maybe one of you guys can jump in. Do you hear the complaint from industry that the government takes but doesn't give enough, or is it starting to kind of come closer?
Tim, do you want to start?
Yeah. You see how he passed that?
Yeah, I'll take it though.
I think that we're moving in the right direction, but I definitely have heard those conversations of a desire for more information back. I think in our space with a lot of our existing information sharing programs that we have, as well as when we're looking to the future and looking to build the next generation of those platforms and what they need to accomplish, we're very cognizant of the fact that it has to be two-way communication. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. We have to be providing valuable, actionable, and timely information back to the energy sector so that they can do what they need to do to defend their networks. That's really what it comes down to at the end of the day. If it's not those three things, it's not going to be helpful and we're not accomplishing our mission. So at the end of the day, that's where we're striving to go towards.
Matthew.
That's exactly right. I think value, timeliness, context, not revealing sources and methods, but why does this indicator and such matter? I think when you talk to each company, each information sharing entity, you're going to hear different things. Different things that they would say, hey, we need more and we're not getting it, or hey, we've got a good thing going here, it's working, let's do more. I think on balance, we're in a position where we've got existing infrastructure and entities that can work together. I think we're always looking for ways to identify what we need to do to improve collaboration, and that's just a day-to-day, month-to-month, year-to-year thing.
Dave, jump in.
Yeah, I would add, the baseline, getting a common set of information available to everybody's step one, and that's improving, clearly improving. I think where we want to take it next as well is real-time collaboration. So we want to get to a point where if NSA has information about a threat to a company that's critical to the security of the nation, or another department that our experts, our threat analysts who are tracking this target and have a nugget of that information from foreign intelligence is able to get on the call and actually call a net defender at a company and be able to collaborate kind of in real time to say, what are you seeing on your network? How can we figure out how to mitigate this and really make sure we understand the whole picture? Because you can't really put the whole picture together unless you understand what the adversary is doing on the network.
So, Sanjay, jump in. Sure.
Yeah, I want to underscore the point about timeliness. I think in cyber, we don't talk about timeliness as much as I'd like to hear about it, because time is very, very important. I mean, I think the example that Dave was talking about, and I think Matt, you were talking about, the ability to have the threat indicator available and the ability to respond to that in a timely manner can make a huge difference. Another comment I would want to make is that, I won't name names here, but I think I'm seeing some more evidence from the large service providers in the IT area that they are collaborating with other entities, both in the private sector as well as in the federal government, in terms of collecting, collating, and making a uniform way to share that information. But I think timeliness is really key in the cyber world and is increasingly becoming more and more important. But I think this is something I would imagine we should try and put some clock around in terms of what time it took us to resolve, identify, and address those issues.
Matthew, jump back in.
Yeah, I was just going to say two things. One, on the automation side, is trying to make some of these interactions automated, meaning you can free up people to do perhaps more human-oriented analytical work that only they can do. I think two is quickly bringing together resources so we can heighten costs on our adversaries. The better we do at managing our networks, defending, the better we do at, let's say, if a company has suffered, let's say, a business email compromise, right? If we can claw back that money, if we make it harder for the bad guy to succeed, they are less likely to be successful, and I think that will take us very far. Not the full way, but very far.
All right, we're going to take a quick break, and actually, Matthew, you set us up perfectly for segment 3. Automation's the key word there. I'll give you a little bit of a tease. But let's take a break. You're listening to the discussion Cyber Futures 2020 and Beyond, sponsored by Raytheon on Federal News Network.